how we doing? Are we awake yet?
No. Yes. No.
No over there.
No. Yes.
Okay.
No over here.
Right. If you feel at any point like you're gonna fall asleep, just start doing some finger exercises. This one is easy level, but then you can alternate them. And that's if you're like really starting to fall asleep and you need to really wake up, you can challenge yourself, okay? I'll also try to not be boring. Okay, well, hello. I do have 3 little kids. They were very confused this morning. They were like, why do you look so dressed up? And I was like, I'm really not, what do I look like on a regular day? They were very confused about what was happening. I was like, I get to go talk to some super cool kids. And they were like, but we're not gonna be there, so like how cool can they really be? I was like, yeah. They're also like, I have twins that are 5. Is anybody here a twin? Yes! You're automatically amazing. Look at that, automatically amazing. You guys are probably pretty cool too. But I have 5-year-old twin girls. They don't match at all. They don't look a thing alike. One has brown eyes, one has blue eyes. One has straight hair, one has curly hair. One is like this much taller than the other one. Like, one has dimples, one has no dimples. One wants to be a butterfly when she grows up. And if you tell her that that's impossible, she gets very mad at you. And the other one, like, routinely just is a dog. Like, you're like, hey, Annabelle, come on. And she just like, all fours crawling into the room and just looks at you and goes, whoo! And then walk. If you guys have any suggestions on how to more often get my child to be a dog, we'll talk later. No, get her to not be a dog. She does the dog thing on her own. We'll talk later. Okay. So we ready? Are you ready today? You're still falling asleep again with the finger. There you go. It's okay. You can just do it in your lap. No one has to know you're falling asleep. Okay. So on Monday, did you guys have off school? Yes. Why? Martin Luther King Jr. Day, very cool guy. I spent a little bit of Monday kind of looking up some things and trying to learn some stuff that I didn't know before then. Guess what I found out? He was super good at pool. Like trick shots. Like I saw this one article and it had him like shoot. Do you know pool? Yeah, you got like the long stick and you're like, okay, he was like doing it like behind his back, kind of not even really looking, which is very impressive to me because pool is basically a sport for me. I am not good at things that require eye-hand coordination or sports or just, yeah, I don't do that kind of stuff very well. So it was like super impressive to me where he was like not even really looking, couldn't you line things up with your eyeballs when you're doing that, right? Right? You raise your hand if you're the kind of person that puts the chalk on, but you have no clue why the chalk is there. You just see cool people do it, and that's why you do it. Same. But it made him such a more relatable person to know that he had this hobby and he was really good at it. And it made me start thinking, and then I was reading more articles talking about how he wasn't like a superhero. Like he wasn't someone all that much different than me. He was a pastor. He was a dad. He was a husband. He was a part of his community. But he was also just like a regular guy. He had foods that he didn't like eating. He had certain things that he did to fall asleep at night, just like we do. He probably had a certain order in the morning that he got ready. Like, do you brush your teeth before you eat breakfast or after you eat breakfast? This is a very divisive subject, I found. People have very strong opinions. Raise your hand if you brush your teeth before you eat breakfast. Raise your hand if you brush your teeth after you eat breakfast. Raise your hand if you had no clue that people did it differently than you. People have very strong feelings on this. I don't know whether Martin Luther King Jr. was before breakfast or after breakfast brusher, but he was one of those things. He was a regular guy that God used in incredible ways because he was willing to say yes. He was just a regular guy. Do you know at one point, so his dad was a pastor and his grandpa was a pastor, and at one point he was like, there ain't no way I'm gonna be a pastor. Like, no, that's fine. We'll just let dad and grandpa do that. I don't need to do that. He was just a regular guy. And it made it, like, reading those things helped me connect with him so much more. Saying, like, okay, he wasn't this super intimidating, crazy, like he didn't glow, you know? He didn't have theme songs whenever he walked into rooms like in a movie, you know? He was just a person that said yes to standing up for something that he really believed in. Here's what else I learned about him that I thought was super cool. He regularly prayed for the people who hated him. At one point in his life, the majority of America thought he was a terrible person for doing what he did. But he spent every night praying for the people that hated him and stood against what he stood for. There's probably a moment when everything changed for him. There was a moment when everything changed for me. See, I didn't grow up going to church. Like, the idea of getting to go to a Christian school would have been like, I don't even know if I knew Christian schools existed as a kid. Like, I didn't know that that was a thing because my family didn't go to church. We didn't really know anybody that went to church. My grandma went to church every once in a while, and then I'd have to go with her. But it was always very confusing because she sat in the front and she was very slow. And so whenever you had to, like, stand up to sing, I didn't know that everyone else was standing up to sing because grandma was super slow. And so it was just like having to, like, keep an eye out behind me of what people were doing. Like, oh, we're standing up. Okay, great. And church was a place where I felt very uncomfortable. So then I had a friend, and she invited me to her church's retreat. And I basically only went because she said there would be really cute guys there. Just being real, guys. I'm just being real. Yeah? You think that's a good idea? Great. I'm glad. Thank you. But I went and I heard about a Jesus that loved me no matter what. I heard about Jesus that loved me before I even really understood who he was or what he was about. And that love changed everything for me. Because I didn't feel like I had anybody else that loved me like that. Like, I felt like my parents were, like, they had to love me, like they were obligated to. Like, if I was the neighbor's kid, they wouldn't be like, you're awesome. They just loved me because they made me, and that was it. I felt like I had to perform for friends. Like, I had to be, like, super friendly, super supportive. Like, I had to be funny for this group of friends. Like, that was my job in life, was to become whatever other people needed for me to become to make them happy. And that's how I got my value in life. And I just thought that's what it was. I had no clue that there was anything different in life. And I got invited to that retreat, and there were no cute boys. And there was a couple, but they were weird. And and I heard about Jesus' love, and it changed everything. You might think that for the disciples, that the moment when everything changed was whenever they started to follow Jesus. And I would argue that's when it started to change for them. As you read through the Gospels, you keep seeing these times when they were like, Jesus, are you sure about this? Because and he's like, yeah, no, it's going to be fine. And they're like, okay, great. So, Jesus, about this whole, like, having power thing, can I get in on that? Like, there were times as they were following him, as they were living with him, as they were watching him perform miracles they didn't even know were possible, they still didn't quite get it. I would argue, maybe not argue, I would state emphatically that I believe that the moment when everything changed was at his death and resurrection. when Jesus died on the cross that weekend, right? So he died on Friday, was brought back to life on Sunday. That weekend, the disciples pretty much like went into hiding. Almost all of them. They like found a little upper room. They kind of like locked the door and were like, what do you think we should do now? I don't know. What do you think? I mean, do you think they're going to kill us if we go out there? I don't want to go out there. I mean, we probably should. Well, what if I imagine what the conversations were. That they were terrified. Not without reason. Jesus had literally just been brutally murdered. Not without reason. But they were so scared. And then when Jesus came back to life, he appeared to them. They saw him. They hung out with him. They ate with him. They spent time talking with him. And that's when everything changed. Because from that point, they were, the Bible says, fearless. They went out and they were like, oh, you might try to kill me. What else? Hey, do you want to get healed? Hey, do you guys want to hear about Jesus? Do you want it? Like, the same things that were scary on Friday were still scary on Monday, but the way that they faced it completely changed because they knew the power of the resurrected Jesus. One of my favorite stories in Acts. If you haven't read through Acts in a while, highly recommend it. I think it would make a really good TV series, by the way. If any of you are good at making videos, I think it would be a fantastic TV series. Also, give me credit because I gave you the idea. So at one point, Peter and John, they found this beggar. He couldn't walk. He was lame. And they were like, would you like to be healed? And he was like, yeah. So then they healed him and they got in trouble. And they were arrested. There was a trial before the religious leaders. There before the saints. Like, it was like this whole big thing. And Peter and John, they grew up like fishing. Like they didn't get to go to school past a certain age. Like they were just regular people. And so they're standing there and they give this huge, long, basically a sermon in Acts chapter 4. And they stand up and like they're talking to the Jewish leadership. And they say in chapter 4, verse 12, salvation is found in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven to mankind by which we must be saved. They could have gotten hands down executed for that. And this is what it says in verse 13. When they, the religious leaders that were putting them on trial, saw the courage of Peter and John and realized that they were unschooled, ordinary men, they were astonished and took note that these men had been with Jesus. But since they could see the man who had been healed standing there with them, there was nothing they could say. So they told them to go away, and basically they kind of went on. They were like going back and forth and like, can we get them in trouble still? Maybe we shouldn't. I don't know. And they eventually let them go, and they went on to, well, you can read it. It's an Acts. But I love that phrase. When they saw the courage of Peter and John and realized that they were unschooled, ordinary men, they were astonished and took note that these men had been with Jesus. Really the only thing that gave them the authority to stand up to the religious leaders of the day, to speak in amazing ways and teach people things that they never heard before, to go around and heal people, was that they had been with Jesus. They didn't have to go to seminary. They didn't have to be influential or powerful or have money or supporters. They were just guys who had spent time with Jesus, and it changed everything about them. I sometimes think, do they still have Choose Your Own Adventure books? Do you know what those are? Okay, when I was a kid, it was like the best thing in the world because you were only allowed to take so many books out from the library at a time, and if you got a choose your own adventure book, it was kind of like getting multiple books in one book, because you would read it and be like, okay, now Mary and Bobby, because they were all like written in the old times. They walked up to the door of this creepy house, and then it's like, if you think they should go in, turn to page 63. If you think they should keep going home and on to the next thing, then turn to page 17. And so then you got to kind of pick what happened next in the story. And that's where you guys, this is why I love hanging out with middle school students, is because you're at this moment when you get to pick next what happens in your story. I get that, like, you know, you're not legally allowed to drive or like do a whole lot of other things. Don't say you can, that's probably not safe. Okay. But you're at this moment when you get to choose what's important to you. It's not just, well, so-and-so said I should do this, so I should probably do this. Well, I've always done soccer my whole life, so I guess I'm just gonna keep doing soccer for the whole rest of my entire life. Like, you are old enough to make these choices about what you like want your life to be centered on, about what you want to spend your time doing, about who you want to be with in life. We get to be a part of God's story if we want. So I work at my church. But part of my job and my church is to be involved in the community. And so I am a lunch monitor for the Butler School District in the 5th and 6th grade building. Not a hairnet food plopping lunch lady. Like, I make sure that I got to break up a fight. I was so impressed with myself. It really wasn't that bad. 2 kids stood up and I had to make them sit down because, 6 feet. But I like to say that I broke up a fight. So it was cool. But I'm there most days during the week, hanging out with these students, and I get to know them. There's one girl who, literally every time I see her, she tries to send me on a mission to go find some other random boy in the room and tell him that she thinks he's cute. And I'm like, do you know his name? And she's like, no. I'm like, no, no, this is not my job. There's another kid who his mom got taken away because she wasn't safe for herself or her family to be around. And he was really hoping and praying that she would be able to come home by his birthday when he turned 12. There's another kid. He thinks he has to be big and loud and cool, but as soon as no one is looking, he looks so tired. There's another girl. Half the time, she's super happy, talking to everyone. Everything is great. Oh my gosh, it's fantastic. Laughing, happy. And half the time, she sits there with tears running down her face. And her friends don't say a dang thing to her. These people are your community. These are your peers. These are people that you are, maybe not those particular kids, but there are people on your sports teams, in your neighborhoods, that go to your churches, that this is the reality. And what they desperately need is some unschooled, ordinary people to tell them about a God that loves them more than they ever could dream. I could say it, but I'm a grown-up. Therefore, way less cool. But you guys have this amazing opportunity to speak into the lives of people that so desperately need it, and you don't have to wait until you're old enough or you've learned more or anything. You can do it now. The only requirement that I see in this passage is that you spend time with Jesus and get to know who he is. going to pray, and then we'll do whatever's next. God, thank you that you have a future for us that involves no more crying or pain or death or sadness. But God, we know that that future is not certain for everybody. And I pray right now that you would raise up some unschooled, ordinary people who would change the world with your message of love. We need it. We need more people in this world who are so convinced of your love for every single person that they're willing to stand up and talk about it. Thank you for these students. Thank you for the time that we got to spend together today with your word. And I pray that you would bless them. It's in your name that